On this episode of Delivering Marketing Joy, we talk with author Ann Handley, who wrote Everybody Writes, and she tells us how to deal with haters. Hey there, and welcome to another edition of Delivering Marketing Joy. I am your host, Kirby Hasseman, and I'm so excited today to have a very special guest, Ann Handley, who's the author of Everybody Writes. She's one of the owners of Marketing Profs, which can be found at marketingprofs.com. And thanks so much for coming on. I appreciate it.
I appreciate your patience, because what your audience doesn't know is that you and I have been going back and forth since, the summer, I think. I found an email from you recently. It's like, how about September 28th? So here it is, January, right?
Well,
so thank you for your patience.
No problem. I'm nothing if not persistent. I will, right? So
good.
So I mentioned it in the intro. You wrote the book Everybody Writes. And I absolutely loved it. I actually told a lot of people that it was like a writing book for the real world, right? I like to write, but I think a lot of books are written in a way that aren't applicable in the real business world, and Everybody Writes totally is. So I highly recommend it to people. What inspired you to write the book, and what was the feedback you got?
Yeah. So first of all, thank you. That was really generous, and I could not have written that better myself, in the sense that that is what I set out to do. I set out to write a writing book for anybody, from somebody like you who loves writing to somebody who is, I called them in the book adult onset writers, people who suddenly find themselves in the business world having to write promotional copy or FAQ pages for their website, or emails to their customers, or email newsletters, or any of those things. And so I really wrote the book as a guide for those people, that had real relevance for a business audience, and not just for what the audience that most other writing books target, which are professional writers or fiction writers or novelists, or, that kind of thing. So I wanted to write a book that was entertaining, number one, that was a fast read, and that gave some real advice to businesses, because I do think that writing is really important. It's incredibly important in this social world that we live in. And so I really wanted to give businesses a guidebook for how to really embrace that opportunity to do it well, and to not hate it, and not to feel like it's a chore, but instead to think of it as like an opportunity to tell your story to the audience you're trying to connect with.
Yeah, cool. So was overall the feedback was pretty good on the book?
Yes and no. For the most part, I think first of all, the book was a Wall Street Journal bestseller. So generally, yes. But like a lot of people, I also see the negative, right? And so there can be 1,000 people who love something, and I'm looking at that one guy over there who's like, giving me that face, like, no, it's all right, fine. So, there are haters. I think anybody who is doing creative work has haters. But, in general, yes, absolutely positive. And I think the reaction to it told me that this was a book that was needed. And so that's incredibly gratifying.
That's cool. So really, all joking aside, I'm not blowing sunshine. I've told you this off air. I'm not blowing sunshine. Everybody Writes is something I think everybody should read. So really good stuff.
Speaking of sunshine, I'm looking at this video, and it's like I look like I'm in some sort of like FBI interrogation room or something like that.
Hopefully the questions aren't that hard.
I swear, it's like sun is brutal, but I have no way to control it. So
no, you look great. Don't worry about it. So I read recently that you'd said that you were a journalist first and a marketer second. I thought that was interesting. So for those of us like me who are trying our best to story tell, that's one of those buzzwords right now. What are some tips to tell good stories?
The first thing is to think about who you're communicating with. I talk in the book, and I talk, from stages all over the world all the time, about the need to have sort of empathy for your audience, and not just empathy in the sense of, oh, I understand how you feel, more like next level empathy, right? Really understand your audience. What are their problems? How can you really help them shoulder their burdens? What is your value to them? I think as marketers, as business owners, as entrepreneurs, we tend to think about ourselves. It's like we tend to think about ourselves and our businesses because we're really excited very often about what our business is. And so we want to tell people about it. But you have to remember that what your audience cares about, and I'm using the word audience, by the way, intentionally. You could also say customers, but I think it's important to build that community, that tribe, that squad, as my teenage daughter says, around you first, and then think about, how do we actually, how do we actually create an audience that wants to buy from us? I think is a whole lot more valuable long term. So to go back for a second, what I was talking about in terms of empathy, it's like, so you want to create something, you want to talk about your company and your business and your services, but really the key is to talk about why it matters to them. In what way does your product or service fit into the context of their lives? And I think it sounds like a simple shift. It's really hard to do in practice. I've been working with marketers for 20 years, 25 years. And it's hard to do because our default is always that we get really excited about what we do and we want to talk about us. But the key is just to take it that one step further and don't talk about you, but talk about why you matter, what value you bring to those you're trying to reach.
Yeah, it's funny that you say that. I always say, that's one of those things that I always say, hey, it's simple. It's not easy. And there's a difference, right? It's a simple concept, and I think sometimes we dismiss simple concepts, but it doesn't mean it's easy to do. So that's a super great tip. Now you kind of alluded to this earlier, and it's funny. I had a question for you set up. It's like those of us who create content consistently, at some point you're going to have haters, right? How do you deal with it? How do you deal with criticism when you're creating content?
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't think that critics come out only for the content creators. I think critics come out and attack anybody who is doing creative work, anybody who is putting themselves out there.
Sure.
I don't know if you're a fan of Brene Brown or if you've ever read any of her work, but she has a fantastic book called Daring Greatly. Mm-hmm. And in that book, she talks about the idea of how scary it is to do creative work because anybody who is doing creative work, anybody that is making themselves visible, the one guarantee is that you are going to have haters. You're going to have somebody who, for some reason, is going to not like what you're doing, and they're going to voice it. And very often, they're going to get pretty personal in terms of how they voice their displeasure. So instead of just saying, "I hate that work. It's not for me," and they feel like they need to go beyond that, and they need to attack the individual behind that work as well. So in terms of, how I deal with it, number one is just to acknowledge the fact that I'm not going to make everybody happy. Yeah. And I think this applies more broadly to business too, right? You don't want to sell your products or services to everybody. You don't need everybody to like you. You just have to know who it is that you're talking to. Who is your core audience? Who is your core customer? And worry about them. So number one, not everyone's going to like me. And the second point, which is inherent in the first one, is not everybody has to. Yeah. And that's okay. I think the harder part is sort of an emotional issue for people like me who, like as I described to you, it's like that one guy out of 1,000 who doesn't like me. It's been more of a journey in terms of knowing that I have to let go of that, of caring what that person thinks. Because I'm the sort of person who wants to be friends with everybody. I want everybody to love what we do at Marketing Profs. I want everybody to love my book. And it's humbling. It's hard to read or hear when somebody doesn't. And because if you put your heart and soul into something, you can't help but feel that way. And so I think it's just been, and it's something I still have to work on. Every once in a while, I'll go to Amazon and I'll read the few 1-star reviews out of, by the way, many, many, many 5-star reviews. But I'll go to those 1-star reviews and I think, God, Ann, why are you doing this? Don't do this to yourself. And in those situations, again, I think about Brene Brown, and Brene has a great story that she tells. Sorry, 1 second. Okay, sorry about that. No problem. Brene has a great story that she tells. This is real. You can tell it's real. You can tell it's live. The phone rings in the background. Brene has a great story that she tells about entering the arena as a creative person. And by arena, she means, entering the public eye, being out there and doing creative work, putting yourself and your reputation and your everything about you sort of on the line because you want to do creative work. You want to do something. And so she has a great story she tells about that person and how when critics attack, the thing to remember is don't listen to anybody who's not also in the arena. So if you're not also in the arena getting your ass kicked, she says, then I'm not interested in what you have to say. Yeah. So I think as people, as creative people, we have to figure out who are the ones who are worth listening to, who are the ones that may give you useful feedback and aren't just being haters, the people who are also in the arena who say, what would have been good here, and to listen to those people and not listen to everybody else.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Brene, I'll be interested to read that. I've not read that book. Seth Godin talks about that too. And actually at one point I asked him a similar question. He's like, if the haters aren't showing up, you are not trying hard enough.
Yeah, that's right.
I love that.
Version of that,
yeah. So, well, cool. You've answered my 3 questions. I give everybody the chance to ask me one question. Do you have one for me?
Yes. I've been dying to ask you since we first started this. What's the 2013 hot list? It's right behind you.
Well, wow, that's good. That's good.
Is it like
placement.
what?
Well,
is it because you're super hot? Is that what it is? So you wound up on that list? Like Kirby, come on.
That is the funniest thing. That's great placement by me. As disappointed as I am, I really thought that's what that was. No, I think it had something to do with the fact that I'm a shameless self-promoter. That's really what it has to do with. But yeah, it was one of those nice industry recognition pieces. But that's the funniest thing I've ever been asked. That's really good. So thank you. I appreciate you asking me that and taking the time today. And once again, really quickly before we wrap up, I want to say it again. Check out Everybody Writes. I'm sure it's available at all the places you buy books. I got it on Amazon, so check it out there. And thanks so much for taking the time. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much, Kirby. This was fun.
Super fun. That wraps up another edition of Delivering Marketing Joy. We'll see you next time. Thanks for watching, but wait! Can you do me a favor? Please subscribe to my channel. If you haven't done it already, the way to do it's right over here. And hey, if you want to watch the last episode, check that out over here. Again, before you leave, subscribe!